kids.
Let's get back together.
We belong together. You and me, North and South. And Caitlin and Caitlin.
Caitlin and Caitlin.
We belong together.
Aww.
Isn't that so cute?
That's so sweet. Where's my latte? It's right. We both have a latte this morning. It's a good day.
It's a good day.
Chapter 15, Reconstruction, which we will dabble into the New South. And my Southern accent is I'm gonna really pump it up this edition. American history. Let's do it. Chapter 15.
All right. So
Devastated South. The vapors. We got to wake up because we have passed out from the devastation.
Bring more salt.
So yeah, it turns out the South really is destroyed. I mean, forget about it.
Like number one, we free all the slaves. 13th Amendment passes.
Woo-hoo.
We free the slaves. You're welcome. Post-Emancipation Proclamation that freed nobody. We're actually going to solidify that everybody's going to be free.
Yeah, no such thing. Now, there is still involuntary servitude, which is jail.
Right.
Because it's not like you volunteer, like, I'll go for a little bit.
Like the lease, right?
Yeah. So when we talk about, and I know some people are going to be like, we still have involuntary servitude, Kanye West. Right. Yeah. But that's called prison.
Right.
Not just for the color of your skin, not just for your beliefs. It's about like, you done broke the law, so let's not get rid of that.
Yeah, that's a whole conversation for
Kanye West.
Not a recorded podcast.
Yeah.
But the South, like, because of emancipation, I mean, post involuntary servitude, they just like lost their entire economy.
Oh yeah, we burned everything.
We burned everything. Whatever railroad ties or whatever railroad tracks they did have,
ripped them up.
Sherman ripped them up off the ground. So they are, I mean, truly devastated emotionally and physically.
Sure. I mean, they lost a huge percentage of their population.
Yep.
So they're very upset. Now, this idea of the myth of the lost cause, it's a very Southern kind of ideology, obviously.
Shocking.
Yeah, it's the belief that the South fought a really noble battle.
Right.
And we lost, and it's we're still the heroes, really. We're just loser heroes. Right. I don't know that it makes sense, but you know what I mean.
That's the lost part of the lost cause. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the North was the aggressor, and they were the bad people that were just trying to fight the South because they wanted to fight, not because they were trying to do anything noble. When in reality, Lincoln, remember, he wrote that letter, and he was like, I'm being so nice.
Please don't
fight us. Me. And then the South was like, pew, pew.
Yeah, that's how it happened.
So, like, who's the real aggressor here?
Yeah, the War of Northern Aggression.
Don't refer to the Civil War as that.
Please don't do that. It just doesn't work out for anyone.
Right.
Okay. So that's this belief, and really this kind of goes along with this tradition of like the cult of honor in the South and chivalry and all that jazz. All right, so competing notions of freedom. So basically we're all like, I mean, we can all look at each other today and be like, so if a person's free, this is what it means. But back in the day, they're like, so does it just mean you're not a slave? Or does it mean you have political rights?
Right.
Do you have the right to education? Like, we don't know.
How free is free?
How free is free?
I just hit myself in the face with this pen.
Very excited about this. So freedom for ex-slaves, again, this kind of idea of does it just a political or is it also social and economic? And there's a debate over that. But the federal government steps in and says, listen, for 1 year, we're gonna help out. It's called the Freedmen's Bureau. It's actually called the Bureau of Freedmen, Abandoned Lands, and Refugees.
Yeah.
So we typically just call it the Freedmen's Bureau, but it actually
because that's a lot of words.
It's a lot of words, but it helps a lot more people than just freedmen.
Freed slaves.
It does primarily help them, but it also is going to help kind of disenfranchised white, largely poor. They were subsistence farmers, many of them women who are now widowed. So the government is going to help a lot of people who fled the southern states for fear of, because, you know, there was a battle in their backyard. So yeah, it's going to help a lot of people, but the primary goal is the Freedmen's Bureau. It is under the War Department, which is a tricky thing because being under the War Department means when there's no war, do you have this bureau?
Operate? Yeah. They're going to do things like they're going to provide food.
Yep.
They're going to provide for educational opportunities for people.
They also look over contracts before you sign them to make sure that you're not getting like ripped off.
We'll talk about some contracts.
We'll talk about it.
And because of this Freedmen's Bureau, because they don't just help the freedmen, we're going to see a lot of white people in the South that are going to support Reconstruction because this is a part of Reconstruction.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about what we refer to those people as later.
And just keep in mind, it's only set for a year.
Yeah.
But it is going to get extended, but it's not without a fight. So we will talk about that later. So problems of peacemaking, issues of Reconstruction. We do have multiple views of Reconstruction. They're primarily Lincoln's plan. There's Radical Republican plan. Charles Sumner, back again.
Oh, Sumner.
He is back.
Oh, God.
Oh, we got an announcement. Okay, so there's Lincoln's plan, there's Congressional plan, there's Radical Republican plan with Charles Sumner, and Thaddeus Stevens.
Thaddeus.
Yeah. So those are sort of the different plans. Now, why they're different plans is pretty important, and it has to go back to the view of, does secession even exist? Because Lincoln's like, doesn't exist. Nobody saw this coming, so I'm the president. I get to make this choice.
Right.
And then Congress is like, man,
Well.
they did secede. Did you not notice the war?
Excuse me, referring to the last few years.
Last several years, it actually did happen. They seceded, and they are effectively conquered territory. And by being conquered territory, they have to go through all the steps again of becoming a new state.
Conquered people, conquered lands. They got to give to them.
Yeah.
According to Mr. Pickard.
Yeah. Refer to Mr. Thaddeus Pickard, not Stevens. Okay, so plan for Reconstruction. Lincoln's is called the 10% plan, and it's called the Proclamation of Amnesty and Reconstruction.
Yeah.
We call it the 10% plan, like literally everybody does. And it's,
I don't even think Lincoln. Well,
Lincoln called it the 10% plan. Like,
he was like, yeah, that was a lot of words.
Yeah, that's so many words. So he actually did this in 1863, which tells us that in the middle of the war, he's like, yeah, we're good.
I got this.
Yeah, we're gonna fix this up.
After the Emancipation Proclamation, he was like,
done.
Wrapped it up. We're good.
Done.
2 more years, whatever.
Yeah.
And it said that with the 10% part was 10% of the voting population. They needed to make an oath of loyalty to the federal government. Like, we're not going to do this again. Super sorry about that.
Yeah, our bad. So that was the plan, but there really weren't that many restrictions on that. So his plan, which is considered to be incredibly lenient by literally everybody else.
Everyone.
But he's like, whatever, I'm Lincoln, and
I'm in charge.
I'm in charge.
This is my country.
It's my country now, and I just rebuilt it. So there's a group of people, Radical Republicans, Charles Sumner, Thaddeus Stevens, who are like, what, 10%?
That's nothing.
That's like
51.
Yeah, 51% more like it.
And then it'll be a simple majority.
Yeah.
That should be enough.
Also,
it's not 2/3. It's not like a plurality.
It's not, yeah.
So
51%. No big deal.
No big deal.
Also, those people can't be like the Confederate leaders because we can't trust them.
Right. We can't. They can never come to Congress. They can never be in the House or the Senate. They can't be in the government because they're clearly people that are just like super cool with treason, like fighting with their own country.
They've already shown that. So why are we going to put trust in them again? We need to give an opportunity to people who did not take up arms against the United States to do this. And basically, the Wade Davis bill is punishing the South.
Yes.
You know, Lincoln wanted to embrace them again and say, let's do this as quick as possible. And Wade Davis is like, nah. Like,
that's what radical Republicans in Congress wanted to do, is punish the South.
Yeah. And have full incorporation, full political, economic, and social rights extended to African Americans. Period.
That was quote unquote radical.
Also, they wanted to, hold on. So, the Wade Davis bill is super controversial because it's so harsh. And Lincoln's like, pocket veto. Now, can you tell us what a pocket veto is?
I sure can.
Excellent, government teacher.
Here's where my expertise comes in. So basically all a pocket veto is the Congress will present this bill to the president, and he has to sign it and approve it. I'm looking for you. Whoosh, keep it moving. So he has to sign it and approve it for it to go into law. Sorry, kids.
We're super popular.
That was Jay.
Keep coming in.
Jay, don't interrupt my podcast again.
I don't even know who that is.
That was Jay.
But he wants to see me, so.
So anyway, the president has to sign it, and then it becomes a law. When he doesn't, he runs out of time. There's 10 days for you to sign it. When you run out of time, he doesn't sign it in those 10 days. That's automatically vetoed, which I feel like shouldn't happen, but who am I to say?
Is there a different... Can you override a pocket veto, or is it dead?
You can override a pocket
Oh,
veto.
you can?
You can override
Dang.
any veto.
All right.
Uh-huh.
I was going to be more dramatic than that. So,
It's
Wade Davis bill.
It's
is
super hard to
pocket-
override a pocket veto, though.
Super hard.
Yeah, it's hard to override any veto.
Yeah.
Because Congress is like, I mean, the president didn't want it, so like, why would we do this again? Because he's still gonna have to sign it.
Right. Okay.
Someone's gonna have to sign it.
So, in response to this veto, the radical Republicans, which emphasize like the radical, they are not a majority in Congress. So it's going to be difficult to override anything anyways. But the Wade Davis response is called the Wade Davis Manifesto. And basically they just drag Lincoln for being like too nice to the South. Lincoln is going to be unfortunately assassinated just a couple of days after the war ends. On April 14th, 1865, Lincoln is assassinated while attending a dramatic play. It's actually a comedy that he goes to. And he is going to be assassinated by John Wilkes Booth, who is a Southern sympathizer. And at the end, Booth jumps from stage onto, how do you...
He jumps from the balcony onto
down,
the stage.
that's what it
and
is.
he's
Balcony.
Like, and then
yes.
he runs to...
And he breaks his ankle, and he yells the Virginia slogan, state motto, which is, "Thus always to tyrants," but he yells it in Latin. Because it's in Latin.
It's because the slogan's in Latin. Because,
yeah.
I mean, all slogans are in Latin.
All of them.
My personal life slogan is in Latin as well. I'll let you know what it is later.
Perfect. So very dramatic. Booth is going to be caught along with a number of conspirators. And we actually have the we have a federal execution of the First Lady. Not the First Lady. Not Miss Lincoln.
I was like, Mary Todd Lincoln.
She's killed, guys.
She didn't do anything.
No, we have for the first time in American history a public execution, a federal execution of a woman who was considered a conspirator, although it's dubious.
Yep. Yes.
She just, but I don't know. I'd have to research that a little bit more. So next.
Okay, so Andrew Johnson takes over as president when Lincoln dies, and he is a Southerner.
From North Carolina.
Moved to Tennessee.
By foot.
Walked there.
You guys think it's a long walk from, like, the parking lot.
Yeah,
I don't disagree with you.
It is a far walk, but it's even farther from Raleigh, North Carolina to Knoxville, Tennessee.
Like, you just one day be like, yeah, I gotta go to Tennessee now.
Like, I'm out of here.
I gotta walk.
I'm out of this one horse town.
So Johnson's personality, it's an interesting point, I suppose, but Johnson's big thing with the Civil War, I mean, he's a Democrat. He is, he doesn't necessarily even have issues with slavery, but he was raised as like a poor guy in the South, and he saw the problems that he blames on the rich guys. He says that it's the plainer elite, effectively, or he calls them plainer elite, that caused the Civil War. So he's going to make them pay for it.
Because the plainer elite, that's the Confederate leaders. The people who are in charge are the people who were already in charge. And side note, North Carolina is very poor. Whenever that King Cotton thing happened, and it was just tobacco, and nobody wanted tobacco, it was just tobacco in North Carolina, nobody wanted tobacco anywhere, they became very, very poor.
Yeah.
And they remained very poor.
And it increased that wealth gap.
Yes.
So they're still going to farm tobacco. It's just not as much of a market, so it puts anybody who can't compete out of business, and further concentrates that wealth and the power of the elite. So Johnson is just going to adopt Lincoln's 10% plan. He's kind of cool with it, except for one thing, and it is called the Lick My Boots plan. And sort of like, it's just the nickname for it, obviously, because it's hard to get an official document pushed through Congress called Lick My Boots.
Lick My Boots.
But it's, he would say, listen, everybody can like this 10%. You want to be part of the 10%? Great. You're probably a good person deep down inside somewhere, except for those Confederate leaders and people with over $20,000 worth of taxable property. That value basically is your plantation owner. And he said, those people have to come to my office, bring me a nice present, probably, and beg me to basically pardon them.
Yeah. Personally apologize to a poor man from the South.
Yeah.
Who you've just marginalized for years.
Yep.
And, then you can have your...
You can have your vote
back. You can
back.
have your vote back. That's
which
fine.
He also did. He let everybody vote.
Oh yeah, no. He was real quick. To very lenient. Eventually.
And so the North gets a bit upset about this. Obviously, the North is like, wait a second.
Hold on, just a beat.
Why is a Southerner in charge of our government? So people were upset about that. Now, Black codes. Black codes are state laws.
State laws. They gave whites power over the former slaves, the freedmen.
They did it through a few different things. One of them is like a vagrancy law. So basically, if you're a African-American person walking on the street.
You are now a vagrant?
You're a vagrant. Even if you're walking to work, if you're not being accompanied by a white individual, you are considered a vagrant and can be arrested. And when you're arrested, these things also become felony charges. So we see the South, including Florida, guys. We're part of this.
We're still the South.
Still the South. Even though our lack of a deep Southern accent.
I feel like we don't like identify immediately with the South, but we are very much the South.
Very much.
Until you get to Central Florida, and that's not the South. No. South of Central Florida.
So when we think about these vagrancy laws, we basically take smaller charges that should probably be, if anything, a misdemeanor, which is a smaller charge.
Walking alone is not a felony, you guys.
Really shouldn't be a crime at all. But what we do is we start making these felony charges. They're really exclusively charged against African Americans, and we add in the whole, if you are charged with a felony, you lose your right to vote. Which we just recently, the state of Florida, like almost 70% of the people in the state of Florida voted to get rid of that.
Right.
And it is a Reconstruction Era law that disproportionately affects African Americans, but affects all populations today. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, what color you are. We still have charges that, like, you should not drive with a suspended license, but it's also not the same as, like, murder.
Right. And side note, that law does not protect murderers or sexual offenders.
Correct.
Just FYI.
Yeah. Yeah, you still can't vote.
You cannot vote.
You made like a really bad choice.
You crazy person.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, we get rid of things like that. We do not start things like that. Like the felon laws. What else is there?
There's like marriage and fraternization
contracts.
laws. Yeah. Contracts. Yeah.
So there's a lot of restriction, even though the South is like, 13th Amendment. Yeah, we'll totally agree to that. Yeah. Also black codes.
Yeah.
So
then eventually we're going to morph those into segregation.
Right. Because what starts as, effectively like, de jure segregation, the segregation by law that's happening in the states becomes very social. And we'll have lots of conversations about that in the future. Yes. But in the meantime, Congress is going to start to pass different laws. It starts with the Civil Rights Act of 1866, but it is the 14th Amendment eventually.
Yeah. What we wanted to do was solidify that as a part of the Constitution so you can't overturn that.
Right.
Because you can overturn any act and say it's constitutional at some point, or unconstitutional, at some point. So we wanted to make sure those radical Republicans in Congress, they wanted to make sure that that was not going to happen. So then we passed the 14th Amendment, and this is the citizenship law. It is going to, anyone born or naturalized in the United States is a citizen, per the Constitution at the 14th Amendment. And then also there's a second part of the 14th Amendment that is the equal protection. It's everybody that's a citizen gets equal protection of the Constitution. And then there's due process.
Love it.
And the 14th Amendment, what due process is, the 14th Amendment is making all the states, the 5th Amendment was federal due process, making sure the federal government treated everybody fair. The 14th Amendment is making sure the states treat everybody fair.
So 14th Amendment, so 13th Amendment in slavery, 14th Amendment, born in the U.S., you're a citizen regardless of condition of servitude.
Previous condition of servitude.
And protection of the constitutional protection even in the states.
All right. Okay, radical Reconstruction. Let's get over it.
All right, let's do it. So 3 Reconstruction Bills. Yes. They are, and then we'll discuss them.
Number 1.
14th Amendment.
Which is the Civil Rights Act of 1866.
Check. Military Reconstruction Act and Tenure of Office Act.
Let's dive in.
So, Military Reconstruction Act, this is going to divide the South into 5 military districts with standing military because we're not doing what we're supposed to.
Right.
We're so we'll abolish slavery, but we don't.
So the Union is going to go occupy the South.
Yes.
To watch them, and we are none too happy about that because we are like, wait, cornering? Is this happening next?
Right.
But that's not going to happen.
Police officer following you in your car, but not really following you. You're just a paranoid person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You're just crazy.
So, at this point, Alec is looking at me and it's making me uncomfortable.
Come on, Alec.
All right. So, that's the Military Reconstruction Act. They're supposed to be ensuring that we are following the plan of Reconstruction.
Right.
Basically. We're in the 3rd District.
I was just going to say, fun fact, Florida is in the 3rd District with Georgia and Alabama. Headquarters is in Atlanta.
I feel like I identify with that experience.
Yeah?
I feel like I'm a District 3 person.
Okay. I thought you were like you identify with military occupation.
No, gosh, no. Tenure of Office Act was basically a setup. So we're going to come back to that, I think. We'll just go ahead and do 15th Amendment really quickly.
Right. So those were the 3 Reconstruction Bills. And then we also have the 15th Amendment, which, universal male suffrage.
Gosh.
Not female, though.
They got us again.
Sorry, ladies. You're just going to have to wait. And also, it was really only black and white. We don't have, like, the Native Americans are not going to vote. Mm-hmm. That was the question that I was asked this year in honors. They were like, what about the Native Americans? And I was like, we haven't even talked about them. They were not a part of America, technically.
No, they're independent, sort of.
So no.
They're dependent. Okay.
Right.
So Tenure of Office Act says that if a person requires congressional approval to maintain a position, so for instance, the cabinet members, then they also will require Senate approval to be dismissed from their position. It's completely unconstitutional.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Makes no sense. Making up rules.
So, basically, Congress made this up because they had beef with Andrew Johnson.
Yeah.
Radical Republican versus borderline Democrat. They're going to trap him with this Tenure of Office Act.
And guess what?
It was working. It worked.
Yeah. Johnson fires Edwin Stanton, the Secretary of War under Lincoln.
Which was a position created by Lincoln for Lincoln.
Yeah.
Lincoln for Lincoln.
It's just advisors. You're allowed to have advisors.
Right. You can do
So
whatever you want.
make them up. So Johnson's like, get out of here, Stanton. And at this point, everybody's like, gotcha. Gotcha. And they impeach him.
Thus we begin the impeachment process because he violated a federal law.
Yeah, but Johnson's like, wait a second, I got ideas. And that idea is, that's not my cabinet.
So why are you telling me what to do?
This is Lincoln's cabinet. He picked these people. I didn't pick these people because I wouldn't have picked these people. So anyways, it comes down to the Senate. Dun, dun, dun.
Right. There's multiple levels to impeachment. You got to bring up the articles in a committee, and then you have to vote on the whole House floor, and then they have to go to the Senate, and that's where they decide, are you going to be removed from office?
And then they decided.
That was what he was saved by.
He was saved by one vote in the Senate, a guy that he bought off.
He was actually impeached, though.
He was impeached, yeah.
One of 2 presidents that was actually fully
Yeah,
impeached.
Nixon just got away from us.
Escaped. He resigned first.
Yeah.
But he was impeached, but he was not removed from office.
Correct.
So, I think that's it. Next slide. Are we good?
Oh, well, Johnson at this point is lame duck. He's just going to hang out for a little bit, and he is the only sitting president to be reelected or to be elected into Congress after his presidency.
Yeah.
But I believe he does die right before that, and he is buried with a Constitution underneath his head.
Because he's like,
he loves
LOL, Tenure of Office Act. Gotcha.
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 All right, I think that's it.
All right.
Excellent.
Moving on. Reconstruction governments. Ooh, I like talking about these. So what we were doing in Congress was, if you will recall, I think we talked about this, barring the former Confederate leaders, which is to say Southern government leaders, from holding office. And so we see a different group of people start to rise into powers of government. So there's actually the rise of the Republican Party in the South, and it is made up by 3 groups of people. So number 1, you have the Scalawags, who were
Not a pirate term.
not a pirate term. It's this.
It's a good one, though.
They are those white individuals in the South that supported Reconstruction. So they probably benefited from the Freedmen's Bureau. Number 2, carpetbaggers. They pack up their bag from
Mary
the north.
Poppins.
Mary Poppins, her carpet bag. There's probably less stuff in these people's bag than hers, but no judgment. And they pack them up and they go down to the South to take advantage of the lack of political leadership, the economic growth,
Dysfunction
that they're going to have there.
But also there's some nice carpetbaggers that are just like, let me help you out. Particularly women who start coming down and become teachers.
Yeah.
What?
Because nobody, like, all the people who were teaching the white kids in the South were, like, private tutors.
Right.
There wasn't, like, a whole, remember, Horace Mann came from the North. There wasn't a whole lot of public education that was streaming down south, antebellum era.
Also not saying anything, but this is also when the teacher salaries start to decline pretty rapidly when women take over.
Mm-hmm. Because it's just a woman.
So I feel like I'm still living in Reconstruction sometimes.
Yeah, this is the Reconstruction era. Gosh. It's happening. So yeah,
And
benevolent carpetbaggers also.
Yeah, a handful.
People taking
of them.
advantage.
A handful.
And then we got freedmen. Mm-hmm. There were several freed slaves that felt that they were able to lead.
Right. So they got a lot of criticism, and one of the criticisms is that they're uneducated in the area of politics, but they're going to use this as a positive, and they state that, what they're uneducated in is corruption. Mm-hmm. That you don't have to have, I mean, it's very a la Jackson. You don't have to be educated in anything to be able to go into government. And so we do see, a solid group of individuals that are able to get into the state government systems.
Yeah.
But we also get a myth that develops around them. It's called the Negro rule, meaning that freedmen they're ruling the South, that they have taken over state governments and all that, but it's not true at all. It's going to remain a pretty low percentage, although some areas, I believe South Carolina for some time has actually pretty big representation, as they should, because their state's like 80% freedmen.
Right.
So
South Carolina is the state that's like got a lot.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
What is that person's name?
Booker?
Hiram Rhodes Revels.
Oh.
First congressman.
Yes.
Good for him.
Federal, yeah. So when we talk
Federal
about
congressman.
Negro rule, a lot of what we're talking about is just state governments. Which is, again, false. All right.
Yes. All right. Education.
Education, guys. All right, so we talked about women coming in.
We're still recording.
Yep. Kind of forgot. We're in the library with Knowles 7th period. I see everybody out there. Aspen, Riley. Thinking about my kids.
Aspen, thanks for getting my stuff earlier.
Yeah, thinking about my students. Drew, Sophia R, Sophia J.
We had good times in library
Sophia
today.
F. All my Sophias out there.
If you're Sophia, put your hands up.
Put your hands up. All right. So, education, we are seeing that in the South, it's going to improve because we have a more comprehensive public school system. We do have people from the North coming down, although it's going to stay segregated for quite some time, obviously.
Segregation, I'm sure you know what it is, but it's dividing people into separate facilities based on race. We're going to talk about that later. Let's go on. Land ownership and tenancy. So are we talking about, yes. When the Civil War was over, we're going to divide up all this land, right? Is that what we're into this right now, right?
So like radical Republicans actually had the idea. No. They have the idea of, you may have heard it before, the 40 acres and a mule. The idea with that is, first of all, there's a lot of land that probably needed to be redistributed. And by that, they mean like these plantation owners who have masses of land can't farm it all. So we're just going to take a chunk of it as a punishment and give it to freedmen who have nothing to start with. There also are an abnormally large amount of donkeys in the South at this time. They've been used by
we'll throw in a mule too.
Donkeys everywhere. They are work animals they were used by the Confederacy to kind of move things around because they don't have, railroads and stuff. So there was just so many donkeys, and they're like, so we'll just give everybody 40 acres and a mule to help balance out the economic disparity between these groups. It does not work.
Andrew Johnson, he gives it back.
But we still see this idea of, well, we need to do something with the amount of land that's out there, which gives way to like so many different systems. And at the end of the day, they're all slavery.
It's all still slavery.
It's all still instituting
We're just
slavery.
Technically like there's payment, but we take that right back.
Yeah. So different types. Sharecropping, which you see on the screen. Sharecropping is that you basically divide a farm up into a number of different plots, and everybody gives a share from their crop value, basically as rent.
Right. You're all of these systems are, well, at least two of them are basically you're renting this land. And so sharecropping is you're paying for it with a share of the crops that you give. It's pretty easy to understand. This is going to be the one that you see the most.
Yeah.
Is sharecropping.
It's the most common.
Another one will be
We have the crop lean system,
cropline. Good stuff.
which is, I mean, for me, it's relatively similar. It's again about farming. It's about, somebody is playing our voice really loud in your class. I don't know who it is, but it sounds beautiful.
I love my voice.
Beautiful. All right, so it's effectively going to be the same for us. Crop lean, it's basically they put a lien or like, basically like, liens are like judgments, but it's basically like I'm going to take a certain amount of money from you.
Yeah.
But we charge so much that it's a system where people can't ever pay you back.
So that's why it's just slavery.
It's still
again,
slavery,
because you're constantly going to be tied to this land because you can never pay back this. And then even if you could, there's like, oh, well, you also owe us back pay for like room and board that we gave you for your entire life, which is awful.
Right, because the white landowners don't want to lose the land.
Right.
So they're going to hold you as long as they possibly can.
And they want you to keep working that land.
Yeah.
So
we also have tenant farming. Tenant farming is really similar to sharecropping. We kind of interchange.
Yeah, you pay money. You like, instead of giving crops straight to the owner, the landowner, you sell those crops and give money back to the landowner.
Yeah.
But you're going to see sharecropping most
everywhere, yeah. Now, we do have other types of sort of institutionalized slavery. Two of them are debt peonage, which is basically it's kind of like indentured servitude, that you're sort of contractually obligated to pay off a debt to someone.
Yeah, like,
don't
leave, you have this debt and you have to work it off now.
Yeah,
so.
which is never going to be worked off.
No.
The second is convict leasing. Convict leasing is, you got to think of like a chain gang, which really is the modern form of it, which is that prisoners in the system will be leased out to work or to farms, or it doesn't have to be farm. Actually, it's
prisoners meaning like actual like jail, like you went to jail for something.
You went to jail for something, and now you're going to be rented out by business owners, and they are going to make you do their work.
Yeah,
and you do it for free. But they profit off of your work.
And this is going to go back to that, like, the black coats thing where these dumb laws existed, like you can't walk alone because you go to jail. And guess what? Now we have labor. So it's going to be, like, really aggressive.
Now, in Florida, the way that we use debt peonage a lot, sharecropping is surprisingly low in our area of Jacksonville, but we do convict lease a lot, and it's mainly for turpentine.
Turpentine forests. That's what we have in North Florida, all these pines.
All the pines, it's turpentine. And so we use them to get that.
That's what you seal boats with, right?
Yeah, it's nasty stuff.
It's gross. So, once again, hard jobs, white people don't want to do it. All right. Oh, crap.
More.
Grappling.
I don't know if we need to do that. A new system of credit, it's not really a system of credit. It's like African Americans have to go to like local stores and like their uncle to get credit. Like it's just, there's no system for them.
No, that's strange.
Women, because they're no longer working in the fields, are going to start to figure out what their roles are. Very oftentimes it's learning or just using the knowledge that they already have, which is kind of keeping them in the domestic sphere. They're going to do laundry and clean houses and be domestic servants, just instead of domestic slave, domestic servant. And when they do this, there's a lot of critique we could give to that, obviously, and I certainly would, but people like Booker T. Washington, who we're going to deal with later, comes out and he's like, it's still education. Education by any means is a step forward.
Right. You're learning a skill that you didn't know before. You're learning this that you didn't know
or
before.
you're applying a skill and in the meantime picking up new knowledge. It's a controversial idea, and we'll talk about that again. I don't think it needs to be discussed yet.
Just yet.
Not yet. All right.
All right. So,
soldiers.
So we have Grant. Ulysses S. Grant. You may have heard of him. My class is currently listening to us talk about Ulysses S. Grant, potentially. Good job, kids. But he was a good general, great guy, get into office, get a little bit sketchy.
Yeah, it turns out no political experience.
So yeah,
at all.
He was a good soldier.
He's a nice guy, apparently.
Do you know him personally?
No, but if I know Andrew Johnson's personality, then I got to know Grant's, and it's nice.
Why did it talk about Andrew Johnson's personality about him? Anyway, so soldier president, U.S. Grant.
Well, and think about it. We like generals.
We do.
It's we are a little bit wary about civilian control of the military. So in this case, we've got George Washington, check. Other people, check.
Andrew Jackson.
Andrew Jackson. There, I couldn't remember his name. Who's that guy with the thing?
George Washington, other people, Andrew Jackson, scene.
Ulysses S. Grant. We like it. Also, have to mention Dwight D. Eisenhower.
I was just going to say,
Thank you.
And your BFF, Dwight D. Eisenhower.
He's my BFF. I love him.
So, Ulysses S. Grant, liberal Republicans, this actually formed in, like, first of all, everybody was afraid to be a Democrat. Like, so people who were like, I kind of think I'm a Democrat. They were like, nope, no,
Mm-hmm.
liberal Republican. I'm not a Democrat. Because guess what Democrats were? Southerners. And we didn't want to be them. So, Grant, he was a radical. He was a more conservative Republican. And so we formed basically the Democrats in opposition to him, which we called the liberal Republicans. And Horace Greeley was a Democrat that ran against him. That was the Go West guy, wasn't it?
I don't know.
Go West, young man. Oh, that's right. I talked to Feezer without you.
Yeah. So that seems like a whole lot of information, and all I really know about Grant is that he done messed up.
He may have been a nice guy. He trusted some sketchy people.
He just thought, like, I'm going to put these people in charge. They're going to be super amazing. It's just Andrew Jackson's spoil system all over again.
He did not know that much about politics, and so he relied on other people. So we got spoil system, the people within his party, cabinet members. He was like, all right, I gathered up a good crop of guys. Turns out, scandal.
Yeah, so, and this is, again, because of mismanagement. It's not that he did it. He is not implicated in it, but it's his management style where he just trusts everybody. So the first is Credit Mobilier. It is actually a real French bank, but it's basically this, like, fake company in America that is profiting off of railroad development, but in order to, like, not seem so slimy, because they're totally slimy, they're giving kickbacks to congressional members. They're basically giving them stocks and, like, hey, if you keep giving us all the railroad work, hashtag not doing it,
right,
then we'll give you all this money. And people are like, yeah, that seems fine.
So yeah, this is totally
because our boss doesn't seem to notice anything.
It was basically bribery.
Yeah.
And
100%.
Wasn't, like, the bank like, hey, what are you guys doing? Like,
you're using our name.
Actual Credit Mobilier was like, wait a second,
that's not legit.
Not a railroad.
But we also have corruption on a smaller scale. And part of the reason Grant gets the blame for it is that it's like your management style is trickling down to all the other governments.
These were state governments or city governments? These were city governments.
Those are municipal, yeah.
Municipal. So Whiskey Ring, we were called that because I was part of it. We were really helping out people who made whiskey. Like, we were giving them a lot of money.
Well, they were evading taxes.
Tax evasion.
And we helped them. And by we, I mean whoever the bad guys are, they helped them. The government officials.
I'm the bad guy.
The municipal, the city council members and city government members were basically helping them evade taxes and getting a cut of those taxes.
Will we talk more about rings in the next time period?
We will. We'll talk about Boss Tweed and Tammany Hall and all that.
So rings are like just these groups of people, and they get it to city governments, and they're just super corrupt.
Yeah, I kind of look at them as like small scale mafia.
Yeah,
is my way of looking at them.
Gangs in New York.
Gangs in New York. Don't watch it. It's rated R. It's not good for you. The Indian ring. It's just another.
It's another municipal corruption ring.
Yeah, I've honestly not ever heard of the Indian ring.
I've heard of it, but I'm always like, oh, Whiskey Ring, Credit Mobilier.
Yeah,
that's the more things that we need to talk about. But it's just the same thing.
Same thing. Boom. Oh, also, they call the Grant period the era of good stealings.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah, isn't it?
Good for you guys.
Good for those historians. It's like a real term for this period, the era of good stealings.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Historians, sometimes we name things pretty poorly.
Yeah, but you know what? We're also like really patting ourselves on the back for it at the same time.
Yes.
We did it.
Nailed it.
Nailed that.
Paper money.
It's funny
green, so
because of the thing.
Get it? And it rhymes.
And it rhymes.
So anyway.
All right, Grant administration, greenbacks.
We got some economic stuff going on.
Yeah, I'm going to sit back.
I mean, are you shocked by the fact that there's economic stuff going on? Because there's bribery and all this stuff happening. So, I mean, it was going to happen. So we were giving out a lot of paper money during the Civil War, if you recall that last episode. Watching it again. And so post-war, what we were trying to do was like get rid of that. Like, we inflated the dollar a lot, so let's just call all that money back. Oh, guess what? Financial panic. Like, you can't do that.
Yeah, we weren't in a stable enough economy at this moment to do that. That's a dramatic move.
Well, Did we talk about war bonds here or last?
We talked about it here.
Okay.
Chapter 14.
Chapter 14.
Yeah.
It just all runs together when we do them so closely. So what was I just saying? Oh, war bonds. So people were like, okay, I want my money back that I just paid, because that was a big thing. A big draw to war bonds was that you got interest on that bond, and then you went and got it back, and you got extra money. It was super tight. So, okay, yeah, I'll take that back. And it was we're trying to redeem it with the paper money, and the banks were like, we can't take this anymore. And so everyone was like, well, where'd my money go? And financial panic. It was bad. There was
also just over speculation is generally how you could
still
a thing.
Never not a thing.
Mm-hmm. Now,
so anyway, so what we want to do instead of having this, the reason we didn't want to take all this paper money back was because we were trying to phase that out and have more stable money, and just like gold and silver like we had before. And so that was causing a bit of a stir because we had all this paper money. We did not have gold and silver. So like, what are we going to pay for stuff with? So we're not making money anymore. The Greenback Party forms in response to that. They want the greenbacks. They want the paper money to stick around.
Yeah, because more greenbacks in a slightly inflated system means that it's easier to pay off debts. Mm-hmm. It's easier to get your a hold of money. And so for people that are in debt,
which was a lot of people,
mm-hmm. Or not even always poor people, just people trying to make a buck by borrowing and reinvesting,
right.
and blah, blah, blah.
Speculators.
They need a little bit. They need a little bit of
cushion.
A little cushion.
Yeah. So it wasn't going to be like that terrible of a thing to keep all that
it's
paper
not
money
a
around.
$450 turkey.
It sure ain't.
Bringing it back.
Still talking about
Chapter 14. All right.
So we have this Greenback Party that's like, I mean, it goes away very quickly, but it's like, no, this is a really good idea to just keep this around. Mm-hmm. So we compromise, which is not something that happens often.
And it's called the Specie Resumption Act.
There we go. I was like, what? So we just based the amount of paper money on the amount of coins that we had.
Yeah, so we just make it like and this is not exactly it, just to make it simple though, $1 equals one piece of specie.
Right. So it's not just like all this paper equals like whatever we have in there.
So that it sort of stabilizes the system, and we're able to remove greenbacks slowly but surely and stabilize our economy. Mm-hmm. Way to go.
Ooh.
Oh my God.
Burning cross. Good thing that they labeled it. So the southern states redeemed, quote unquote. Redeemed by who?
Yeah.
Because I don't know.
It basically, the South is like, oh, we like all your rules, government. Not.
Psych.
So they're like, well, we're going to follow your rules, but we're also going to make our own that negate everything.
We go around it without actually like going directly against it.
Yeah. So we talked about the Black Codes, number one. Mm-hmm. Southern intransigence is how the book used to title it. So ways that the South is protesting effectively. The second way that they do it is that they create these social organizations, which unfortunately best known as the Ku Klux Klan.
Right.
But there's more. There's Knights of the White Camellia. There's the Red Shirts.
Red Shirts.
I mean,
they're a good one.
Yeah, they're all, well, not a good one.
No, none of them are good.
But like classic hate group.
Right. The KKK. They're like vigilantes.
I guess.
But I feel like sometimes vigilantes, like Batman's a vigilante, and I don't want to tie him to this.
Oh gosh, no.
No.
So
they're taking the law into their own hands a lot of the time, but they're being entrusted with the law a lot of the time because the police are like, I can't take care of this.
Or are members of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So Ku Klux Klan, their original goal and the goal of most of these hate groups in the South is, while yes, it is violence against freedmen, 100%, it's really larger than that. They want to destroy the Republican Party in the South. That means if you're a carpetbagger, you're a scalawag, you're a freedman, we're getting rid of you.
Yeah. I wish the donkey cartoon was on here. That's a classic. With the KKK donkey and then the guys that are hanging are the carpetbagger and the guy. I'm going to show it to you after we're done with this. But yeah, so they're targeting the entirety of the Republican Party, and no one is safe.
Yeah. So it got so bad that the federal government created the enforcement acts, which are the KKK acts, we kind of refer to them as. It made a few things illegal. You could not wear costumes while participating in illegal activity. Isn't that it's an interesting one.
Does this act still exist?
I don't know. but it's a weird one.
Isn't the activity already illegal?
The activity's illegal.
And then your costume is also illegal.
But the costume while doing it, because it hid your identity.
Aha.
So it's like double whammy.
There we go.
Double whammy.
Double whammy.
But it basically will seek to destroy groups like this and to help protect individuals in the South.
We do see a decline in the Klan. Fortunately, we see a decline.
Yeah.
But it's going to pick back up. It's not going very far.
It's going to change a little bit, and it's going to be at its height and a little bit down the road.
Okay, waning Northern commitment. Okay.
So there's a few things that, I mean, the panic in and of itself.
The panic, the scandal, basically Grant was why we stopped paying attention.
It just gets to be a lot. People are like, okay, I can't really worry too much about the continuing trying to get these people to change their brains. And also now I'm poor because of the panic and I got things to worry about.
I got my own problems to attend to up here in the North. I cannot be continuing to worry about the South.
Yeah.
There's just too much.
Now, the impact of social Darwinism, this seems early for this term.
It seems early for social Darwinism, but I guess, like, it's just that, I mean, I don't care. You're poor because you're poor.
I guess. Like, the South is in this position because of the makeup of their human bodies.
Right.
Sorta. I mean, it's like mental capacity and abilities and...
Those who suffered did so because of their own weakness.
Yeah. So social Darwinism is the ideas of Darwin and evolution applied to society, to economics, to you name it.
Yeah. And we talk about it mostly in economics, like business.
And immigration.
Oh, yes, immigration. That's right.
Right. So we talk about those two. And, but again, we'll come back to that a little bit later. But basically, everybody's just kind of ready for it to be over.
Yeah. We're like, TikTok.
Right.
Let's fix this situation or let's get out.
So the compromise of 1877, this is an election of 1876 between Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel J. Tilden.
Rutherford is my favorite president's name.
I'm really into the, everybody's got like an important middle initial.
Right. You just got to make sure
Edwin
everybody...
M. Stanton. People. Okay.
D. Knowles. I'm very
important. So there is an election in 1876, and guess what? 20 votes shy of a winner.
Yeah, not so tie, but you know.
Hayes is 20 votes behind exactly, and Tilden is 1 vote behind.
Yikes.
Yeah, so Tilden should win this.
Yeah, should.
There are 3 states. Tilden is the Democrat. There are 3 states that are being contested, and they are, drum roll, big surprise, Florida.
Florida, what up?
It's like Florida, South Carolina, and
probably Georgia. It's like Alabama,
Mississippi, or Alabama. So, yeah, there are 3 southern states: South Carolina, Florida, and Louisiana. So they're being contested largely because of things like bulldozing, which is when you don't let people vote. Like you basically like stand up to like some guy's coming down like doop doo doo, I'm gonna go vote
time,
and you like knock them out.
So like Bleeding Kansas.
Yeah, I mean it's rough out there. It's
tough
really
out there for a voter.
It's a lot of intimidation, and the people that are really being pushed away are African Americans. And you know, side note, totally forgot to mention this. Grant is really significant because he is elected because of the African American vote.
Right.
And that's huge.
And then we start disenfranchising them.
And then we immediately start. He would not have won had
this practice started even further, which we'll talk in a minute how we disenfranchise them.
Yeah. So this period, Tilden, Democrat, he should get those 3 states,
but he doesn't.
But he ain't gonna get them.
He's not gonna get them.
Special Electoral Commission is called. They make the decision that all those votes should go to Hayes, which, I mean, not wrong if you look at the patterns from earlier elections with the black vote.
Had this been a different election.
Right. So the compromise is decided that we're going to withdraw troops from the South. This effectively ends Reconstruction. We're going to allow for, like, a Southern Postmaster General. It's a big deal.
Yeah, it doesn't because we hadn't had people in the executive branch that were
right, and
Southern.
Because the South had previously stopped. I mean, we read it in my class, but the South had said we're going to stop allowing abolitionist mail-in. No more abolitionist mails allowed in. We're going to stop all this publication. Blah 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 blah. So this is a good faith effort. We're like, yeah, it's okay. You can be whatchamacallit, Postmaster General again.
Yeah.
Outside of that, there are just some smaller compromises. For us, it's really about the withdrawal of military troops.
Right. Because Hayes was a Republican, so had he been in office, he probably wouldn't have ended Reconstruction, but I don't really think that he cared that much about Reconstruction because I mean, we just talked about waning Northern commitment. We don't care anymore. We got bigger fish to fry.
Yeah, and it was so controversial at the time that Hayes is the only president that was purposefully inaugurated in secret before announcing it to the public.
Just in case.
They thought they were going to rebel.
Right.
And so
we didn't do that.
They just did it in private.
So, post-compromise, so Hayes is president, Reconstruction's over, Republican failure in the South. That means the Republican Party wanes as well as the Northern commitment to the Reconstruction.
Yeah, the ways of disenfranchising the predominant portion of Republicans, which is freedmen.
The African Americans, yeah.
We're going to get to in un momento.
Okay.
The Redeemers.
Yes, New South.
Yeah, New South, this ideology of what the New South is, super important for us, okay?
Yeah.
Because you get questions all the time on how new was the New South? And the answer's like, it's not.
It's not.
Okay.
Same South.
Same stuff. All right.
Go ahead with the bourbon rules.
Yeah, these are the people that are like, hey, listen, we're going to be in the government now, but we're going to do things the Southern way.
How we did them before.
Right. So it's like they get they're called the Redeemers. They sound like they're going to help everybody out. They're sometimes called the Bourbons, which I believe is a reference to like an old European, like the Bourbon dynasty.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know in Italy there's a bourbon class, and it's just like old elite population. Yeah. So they're called the Redeemers, but they're really the Bourbons.
It's the planner class.
And so they're like, listen, here's what. So they're like, we're going to take over. Everything's going to be different, and by different we mean exactly the same as it was before. And so people are like,
different than Reconstruction, so we're good.
What do? They cut spending for social programs, for education. They basically just throw it all out the window.
Yeah.
Like, we don't care.
We're
anymore.
back to doing what we were doing before. It's fine. Okay, so industrialization in the New South. One thing that we really wanted to, I guess, focus on a little bit more, though, was the industrialization. If we remember back when John C. Calhoun was arguing that the federal government should be be paying for roads and canals and stuff, like, it had that speech, impassioned speech, if worked, maybe would have been industrialized a little bit. It's not. Henry Grady was not really a businessman or anything. He was a speech giver, an orator, and he was very vocal about the fact that nothing was coming from the South. All we had were the raw goods, and then the manufactured goods came from somewhere else. And so he kind of voiced his concern there. There's a document. It's called something. It's very intriguing. We're gonna get to it.
Such a good document.
That was a good description of it too. But his passion about it does lead to a little bit of railroad development.
All right, but also when we say like railroad development, it's just getting back to where they were before.
Right.
We're
not fixing the railroads.
It's not like there's a billion new railroads.
It's not like the North and the Midwest.
It's like we're gonna rebuild the one that goes through Atlanta.
Yes.
And yay, and that's it.
There you go.
We already talked about the convict lease system and how awful it is, but that's what we're using in the South. We still have tenant farmers, sharecropping, cropland, you name it. So how new was the New South?
It wasn't.
It was not at all.
Cough, cough. At the South, they're stuck in their ways. All right, moving on.
Yeah.
Okay, African Americans in the New South. This is.
We talked a lot about this. I think we can probably even skip this.
We mentioned Booker T. Washington.
We mentioned Booker T.
We talked about the education and things like that.
Yeah, we'll talk about the Atlanta Compromise later. It doesn't really fit right in this spot. So I think that we are good on that one, I think.
Okay. I have to make sure my phone's right. Is this the last line?
I believe so.
Okay, wait. All right, so last thing, we want to talk about Jim Crow. I mean, officially after Reconstruction, but probably during Reconstruction too. We have black codes, we know we have, but then we also have Jim Crow, which are still laws restricting what the freedmen can do, but these are segregation laws. The Jim Crow, I believe we talked about the minstrel shows back in period 4.
Yeah.
This Jim Crow is this like caricature of the African American slave, and like
it was the Sambo persona.
Sambo,
which is kind of like an infantile man, like a man that is childlike in his emotions and thoughts and all of that. It's very demeaning.
Right. So this obviously is not right. And so we try and fix that. Plessy versus Ferguson is actually a test case, which a test case is like a group going in and trying to test the legitimacy, the constitutionality of laws and make sure that they're found unconstitutional, which most of the time they are. Plessy versus Ferguson backfired. This was a case, a man on a rail car for white people. He was not fully white.
Yeah, but he was like, he was like only 1/9 African American.
He was 1/8. He can't be 1/9.
You can't be.
He was 1/8.
10/9.
He was 1/8 African American.
Why can't you be 1/9?
You can't be 10/9 either. Anyway,
I think I'm right. Right. So he was very, very small percentage. Like on the surface, by looking, he would not appear to be
automatically appeared African American. Exactly. But they were like, okay, thanks for letting me know that you're 1/8 African American, so you're going to jail now because you're in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And so this goes all the way up. We're like, you can't have these laws; they're unconstitutional per the 14th Amendment, and the Supreme Court is like, no, you're good. That's called rational bias. The Supreme Court, the federal government, confirmed the fact that Jim Crow laws were constitutional.
Which the thing with Plessy versus Ferguson is the separate but equal doctrine. So you can have separate facilities as long as those facilities are equal. But what that means in logistics is you're dividing money.
Right.
And the white population just isn't really going to, that's not their expectation.
No.
So they're going to keep what they were, whatever's left, which isn't much, goes
like
to
they
the other
both
resources.
Both groups had rail cars. You're just on the wrong one, Plessy. So, I mean, you had one to go to, so this is still constitutional.
Yeah.
You're fine. Other things, restricting the franchise. This is the disenfranchisement. These are the laws that restricted African Americans from voting. And didn't say African American, you cannot vote.
Right.
It said you have to pay a tax, which most of the African American,
it was a $2 tax.
It was a pricey tax, and we couldn't pay that.
Right.
You also had to pass a literacy test, which was not a like how well do I know my commas and semicolons. It was political literacy, which I don't know, because education has been so low. And just to make sure that these two laws didn't affect white people, poor white people who didn't get education and also couldn't afford a tax, we had the grandfather clause, which said if your grandfather could vote, so can you. So that just saved the entire white population. So there we go. So white control perpetrated. I feel like that's what that is.
Yeah, lynchings, which have been around, unfortunately, for some time, but I just want to be specific. A lynching is not just a hanging. It is a
murder.
It is a public execution. It's meant to show that whatever rules the community has established have been violated. There is a trial that takes place in front of the community. The community will find the person guilty, and then they hang them publicly. So it's a multi-stepped, public, illegal trial
Outside the law, like
so
it's whoever we want to target, which at this point in time was freedmen. It was also the other two pieces of the Republican Party as well.
And I think a lot of times we have this view that lynchings are just like hangings in secret in the forest, and they are not.
They're not
at all.
They're public.
Very public. Unity amongst white population. They gotta like support each other if they're going to keep this ideology going, and it's just going to take a long time to do our best to get rid of most of that ideology.
Yep,
doing our best.
It's going to take a really long time. Oh well, we're going to keep fighting it.
True statement.
Okay, so
I think that's it,
guys.
This
is where we leave you.
I know it's been a long one, but it's a good one.
We'll leave you with some.
I say that for everyone because it's true.
Because it's true. They're all fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, well, here's some Mariah to play you out. See you next time. Bye, guys.